Hi, and welcome to the second video in this monthly series where I talk about everything I watched and read in a month. Let's get into it. This is a weird movie. I enjoyed the first 30 minutes, which were playful as they established the titular friendship and Jules' love interest, Catherine. However, the rest of the film had a very different tone. A lot of my issues with the film boiled down to the writing of the characters in the second half, particularly Catherine, who became a harder and harder character to understand and empathize with. This could be the point of the film, however, her evolution was very hard to follow. The end also had me laughing at parts where I don't think I should have been laughing, and the twists at the end didn't work for me at all. And not only is it hard to understand Catherine as a character, but also to understand the other characters' lack of awareness. However, I did enjoy a lot of the dialogue and the playfulness with which Truffaut constructs a movie. I feel like a film like GoodFellas has been talked about to no end, and it's hard to feel like one has anything new to say about such a well-discussed classic. I really appreciated the pace at which Scorsese tells this story. Even when his run times are high, he keeps a very intentional pace throughout, to the point where he can intentionally subvert this pace in films like The Irishman. The performances were all spectacular, and Joe Pesci deserves all the praise he gets for this performance. He brings so many layers to that character. Another standout for me was Lorraine Bracco, who had to evolve her character in so many ways, and her acting made it look effortless. It's funny going from Jules and Jim, a film coming out as part of the French New Wave, and following it with Scorsese because the influence is very apparent. The use of stills and freeze frames, the inventiveness of the narration, and even his breaking of the fourth wall seem to come from a deep love of that era of filmmaking. Honestly, I was really confused for a lot of this movie. This might have been on me for watching it in 2 sittings. The mystery interested me at first, but didn't really hold my attention. I also didn't find myself laughing at many of the parts that were supposed to be funny. This was the only Paul Thomas Anderson movie I had yet to see, and I'm glad I've gone through his whole filmography, because he has made 2 of my favorite movies of all time: Boogie Nights and Punch Drunk Love. However, this would be low on the list if I ranked his movies. But the film wasn't without merit. The cast was great, the visual style was cool, and I really loved the whole Wolfman plot, which I can't expand on without spoiling the movie. It's a pretty fun time, but it left me wanting much more. I've been hearing about this movie for such a long time, and I was so excited to finally see it. The highlight of this film is how well edited it is. The movie's opening scene is a great example, cutting back and forth between our main character studying photos and his daughter playing. So many cuts flowed perfectly into one another as the scene effectively unfolded before you. This continued throughout the movie, with many examples of cross-cutting and clever editing. I also really liked many of the performances and the way they shot the city of Venice. I can see myself liking this movie more on rewatch, as some of the elements that seemed random and out of place wouldn't distract me as much now knowing the entire plot. Tarkovsky is a director I've been meaning to get into for a long time, and this was my first of his films. Before getting to the direction, I want to discuss the script. The dialogue in this film is so captivating, not only because it's so well written, but because of how often the movie is without it. In the scenes where the characters are conversing, their discussions are engaging, touching on the meaning of life, the role of an artist, and what our desires say about who we are. The film has so many sections that are purely visual, and the cinematography and shot compositions are beautiful. These long, purely visual sections make the film feel meditative without ever feeling boring. Lastly, the acting was amazing, particularly Alexander Kadanovsky, who gave one of my favorite performances I've seen in a long time. I finally got caught up on watching Attack on Titan, and I really loved this last season. I plan on making a full-length video about the show just because I have so much to say, so I won't dive too deep here. I'll start by talking about how singular the action in the show is. Maybe I'm wrong as somebody who isn't super well-versed in anime, but there is something so engaging and thrilling about how Attack on Titan's action scenes are animated. The animator's talent for rendering speed and scale is unparalleled. This last season really did not hold back in any regards, and went to some really dark and morally twisted places. The first 3 seasons of the show were centered around mystery, as we, along with the characters, learned the secrets of their world and its rules. Because we have nearly all the answers at the start of the 4th season, the show can widen its gaze, focusing more on morality than mystery. It's impossible to say more without spoiling anything, so I'll leave it there. I've been keeping up with the newest season of Jujutsu Kaisen, and the show continues to prove why it's so popular. The animation's very crisp, modern, and realistic. The action scenes get better as the show continues. It also has some of the most memorable characters in any anime I've seen. Even villains only featured in a single episode are well crafted and singular, keeping the show fresh. I'm thinking of doing a whole video about this series as well towards the end of the season. This book is so unbelievable and well written that it's easy to forget it's a true story. To me, this is a mark of great nonfiction writing. True stories that I struggle with are the ones that feel more like a report than a story. Heather Morris writes so well and at such a perfect pace. I think about pace a lot in relationship to movies, but not as much in books. But the cadence at which Morris feeds the reader new events and turns of the plot makes it impossible not to engage with the story. Obviously, the book takes place in a concentration camp and is full of disturbing accounts of the atrocities that occurred there. However, the heart of this book is the love story it holds. I recommend this to people who like history or anyone who enjoys a good and surprising story. Blake Crouch has become one of my favorite authors. I love his books Dark Matter, Recursion, and Upgrade. Pines is the first book of the Wayward Pines trilogy, a trilogy that got adapted into a TV show, which I watched the first season of when it came out, and I enjoyed it. When I learned Crouch was the author behind the series, I knew I wanted to check it out. While I didn't think the book felt as fresh or groundbreaking as Dark Matter, Recursion, or Upgrade, I still really enjoyed the story. While people may remember Crouch's science fiction work because of its well-executed high concepts, the reason his readers get invested in his stories is his talent for writing characters. In Pines, the main character, Ethan, carries the story so well, and his backstory, which is slowly revealed throughout the book, is just as interesting as the story's main plot. While I've only read 2 of his books, Hermann Hesse, like Crouch, is rapidly becoming one of my favorite writers. A few months ago, I read Demian, which was Hesse's first big hit. Siddhartha is even more popular and well-renowned. I read this book in high school, and while I thought it was cool, much of it went over my head. Now I can confidently say this is one of my all-time favorite books. The story is simple, but contains so much wisdom and introspection. The other 2 books I have discussed were books I consumed as audiobooks. However, a book like Siddhartha is so rich with thought-provoking passages that I enjoyed going through it slowly with the book in front of me so I could reread and underline things I wanted to remember. The story is about a man's search for enlightenment and his many paths he takes to achieve it. While the plot was compelling and held my attention, the narrative is just a vessel through which Hesse shares ideas and truths that his readers can live by. I couldn't recommend this book enough and can't wait to read more of Hesse's writing. An online artist whose videos I've been enjoying lately is Andrew Lavers. I first found Andrew when I was making my video about Van Neistat, and became curious about other videos that have been made about him. I found his video on Van Neistat and was immediately hooked by Andrew's distinct creative voice, writing, and overall ethos. His weekly series of videos are about how to get past creative block or an inability to engage with one's creative work. In each video, he talks about one way to get past these blocks. The methods range from taking walks to phoning a friend or doodling. I look forward to a new video of his every week, and I think that any creative person would find his channel entertaining and informational. So those are some of the things I've been enjoying this month. Let me know if there's anything that you've been particularly liking, and I'd love to check it out. And I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. Thank you.